Hey there, it's Dana from MadeEveryday.com. I have got a little mini project for you today. We are going to make mini totes. They are the perfect size. I don't think you can have too many bags, and I am often drawn to the bag section at any store. And I started noticing this trend of the mini tote at all my favorite retailers, and I thought, I have to make one of those because it would be so cute to incorporate all those cute cotton fabrics that I know you have at your house, along with duck cloth to help it stay up nice and sturdy like a professional tote bag. And even though this bag is mini, it really is such a great size. I have been using this all month everywhere I go, and I absolutely love it. So let's make a bag. Here's what you need: a half yard of duck cloth or canvas, and 1/2 to 3/4 of a yard of a fabric you love. Duck cloth is a really sturdy, heavyweight fabric that's going to give a lot of structure to our bag. Typically it comes in this natural cream color, but you can also find it in other solid colors. You can find it online. I actually got these at Hobby Lobby. It also came in black and navy. And if you don't want to use that, or you can't find that, you could use other canvas fabrics or twill. Twill has a little bit of a tighter weave, which often comes in fun prints, but the only drawback is that these are typically not as heavy as the duck cloth. You really want that if you want a sturdy bag that stands up. So that's fine. You can make a slightly floppier bag. It's just whatever your preference is. And then what I really love about this cream color is that it looks so cute when you combine it with all of the cute cotton fabrics. There are so many of these types of prints out there. So we're going to actually use the duck cloth to kind of like an interfacing, make this a little sturdier. Okay, let's cut out your fabric. Here are all the pieces you need for your bag. And here's how I got there. Start by pressing your fabric. Duck cloth is pretty thick, but with a little water and the iron, you can usually get most of the wrinkles out. I recommend not pre-washing and drying your duck cloth. I've done that before and it gets extremely wrinkly. Then you also want to press your cotton fabric, make sure that everything is really nice and smooth. The key to this project is going to be precision when it's important. Okay, then I took my duck cloth and it is folded in half. And again, it's really thick, so it can be kind of challenging to cut through 4 layers with your rotary cutter. But my cutting mat is not long enough to cut 2 layers, so just do your best. It is definitely a little bit of a workout. I'm gonna cut my 2 long strips at about 1 3/8 inch by the width of the fabric. This is longer than you're going to need, but it gives you some wiggle room. Then I'm gonna cut my large piece, which is 15 by 16 inches. Then we have our 2 pieces that are 15 by 9, and eventually we're gonna cut our 2 pocket pieces 6 by 6. For your cotton fabric, start by cutting your strips 3.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. You need 2 of those. And then because my fabric was larger than a half yard, I'm able to cut a large piece of fabric 15 by 16 inches. But if you only had a half yard of fabric, you would first cut your strips 3.5 inches, 2 of those strips, and then cut 2 pieces that are 8 inches by 16 inches. Place them right sides together, sew a seam down the middle about 3/8 to 1/2 inch. Press that seam open, and then you have your piece all ready to go. Grab your 2 pocket pieces and your 2 side pieces, and we want to hem the top of both of these. So start by folding it over about 1/4 inch. And my fabric does not have a real wrong or right side, but if yours does, make sure you are folding over to the wrong side of the fabric. And these side pieces are somewhere where you do need to be precise. So I am eyeballing it here because I've done this enough times that I can kind of gauge where 1/4 inch is. But if you are not familiar with that, then grab a little ruler and measure. I think that is fantastic. So when you're done with this, go over to your machine and sew it in place using either a coordinating thread color or a contrasting thread color. Sometimes I will sew it with just a cream colored thread first on these pockets especially, and then it's kind of fun to go back later and add a little contrasting stitch, maybe a double stitch, just to give it a little bit of character. I think I'm gonna do that with some red thread, which will look great on this bag. And then these 4 pieces are ready to go. You can set those aside. Now let's work on the handles. Grab your outer fabric and the duck cloth pieces, and we're going to use the duck cloth to put inside of the handles and make them a little stiffer so they stand a little bit better. Take your first strip and we're going to press the whole thing in half lengthwise, all the way down, and you will be doing this for both strips, both handles. Now grab your duck cloth piece, and we're going to open this up and place your duck cloth right at that fold. So you can see right there, I'm actually a little bit scant of the fold, and that will give me a little bit extra wiggle room. Then I'm going to fold this over and give that a press. And this is going to help us get a really precise, nice looking handle. It's going to look professional. And this moment is sort of a choose your own adventure with how stiff you want your handles to be. I have done it where I've used 1 layer of duck cloth. I've also tried it with 2 layers, and the 2 layers is definitely gonna stand up more. I sort of like that look, but it's a little trickier to go through your machine if your machine can't handle that. So you decide what you're comfortable with, and you could also use interfacing. That works fabulous. I just like using what I have on hand. Now flip it over and move the duck cloth down, and we're gonna do the other side. And if you find that this is not enough wiggle room for you to fold those edges over, no problem. You could have cut your strip, your red fabric here, a little bit wider. I was just trying to maximize our fabric, so you could cut everything from a ½ yard of fabric. Everything is pressed and prepped, and now we're going to add our secret ingredient, a glue stick, which quilters love to use, and this totally upped my game and really changed this project. Let me show you what it looked like before. I was sewing my strips, and no matter how much I tried, my handle kept shifting and puckering a little and twisting. And then I tried the glue stick method, and oh, beauty! It came out flat and perfect, and it was so easy to sew. This process is gonna take a little bit longer to glue and put together, but I promise you, it is so worth it, and you're gonna be really happy when you go over to your machine. First, take our glue stick, glue one side of the duck cloth. Just go all the way down. If you like arts and crafts like you did when you were in elementary school, this is your moment to shine. Then take that, and it doesn't really matter which side you start on, but just apply it to one side and make sure everything's flat. It should be because we just finished pressing it, but smooth it with your hands as you go. Now glue over this other side. So let's flip it this way. And I'm actually gonna glue an entire section at a time. So glue that, then bring this side over. You don't want to do too long of a section at once because the glue will dry. You'll get the hang of this as you go and find what works best for you. And then we're going to fold that up to that. And with this particular print, I can really, find where that print matches up, and that helps me a lot. You might not have that on yours, and that's okay. Just make sure everything is flat as you are going. Okay, then just keep bustling along. And then once you get the whole thing glued, you could do this as you go along, or you could glue the whole thing and then press. But we're also going to take our iron and press that right on top, and that's really going to seal the deal. And look how beautiful that looks. So keep going all the way down. I'm gonna keep gluing, pressing. I'm gonna do that for both of my handles. Then we're gonna go over to our machine, and we're gonna quickly sew down one side and sew down the other side, and our handles will be ready. We have our two beautiful handle pieces. I am so pleased with how this turned out. Now we just need to trim them down to 34 inches. You could just lay this one right on top of the other one. That gives you an even more precise cut. All right, set your handles aside. Similar concept as the handles. We're going to use our duck cloth to reinforce our cute fabric. And to keep these two layers together, we are going to quilt them. Don't let that word scare you. It's going to be very simple. Then grab your glue stick again. We're going to use this just like we did for the handles. Just going to do it all over here. And make sure that both of your fabrics are already pressed nicely so there's no wrinkles in them. Then grab your pressing mat and your iron. And both of these pieces are a little larger than we will need. We're eventually going to trim this down to 15 by 13 inches. Then I'm going to start in the middle here and just fuse these two layers together. And you don't have to do this. You could just pin these two layers together, or you could use spray basting, whatever your preference is. You can see these two layers are staying together pretty nicely. If you wanted to secure it even more, you can take some pins and do that. And then decide how you want to quilt the top of this. That just means sewing the two layers together so that it stays really well together. And I'm just gonna eyeball it. I'm just gonna sew between some of these lines. You could also take a ruler and draw. You can look at my other quilting videos for that. I'm just using my standard presser foot, and I've increased my stitch length a bit, and I'm not gonna do a start and stop. I'm just gonna start sewing. And like I said, I'm just kind of eyeballing this area because this print of fabric makes it easy to do that. Then I'm going to go over to the next spot. Choose your own adventure. Now we want to trim this down to 15 by 13 inches. And sometimes when you're starting, you don't know which side to square up first. Just kind of look at the lines on your grid or whatever you sewed and make one line the first line, and then you can go from there. Now we are really ready to grab all the pieces and start putting our bag together. We have the bottom, we have the two sides, we have our two pocket pieces, and the way this goes together, we're going to take each of our handles. Those are going to enclose our pockets. 1, 2, sew those in place. Then we'll sew the sides to the bottom. Then we'll fold the whole thing in half, sew it, box out the bottom, and we'll be done. Take your side piece and make sure that you're doing this on the right side. Remember, we already prepped this, and we're gonna put our pocket right on top. So you wanna find the center point. I'm gonna fold it in half and just press a little bit at the bottom there and a little bit at the top. You don't wanna press the whole thing down because then you're gonna have to iron out that crease again. So just a little bit like that. And then do the same thing on your pocket piece. This is just to make sure we're centering it in the right spot. So now you can see that point and that point are going to line up. And we are first going to just sew these two together, just kind of as a basting stitch, and do the same thing for your other one. Then go to our machine and sew it in place using a 1/4 inch seam. Then enclose the raw edges of your pocket with your handle piece. It doesn't matter if the handle's going this way or this way, you just want to make sure it's not twisted anywhere. So if you lost your center point, mark that again, and it helps in this step to have an actual visual. Place a little pin there, and we're going to measure over 2.5 inches from this center point. That is where we're going to place our pocket piece. So right there, place it at the 2.5 inch mark, and put a pin, and there you can see our pocket is going to be functional. Do the same thing at the top, 2.5 inches, right there. Place a pin, and then pin everything else in place. And if anything looks off, trust your eye. I always trust my eye more than my measurements. Then do the same thing on the other side. All right, do the same thing with the other piece, and then we're going to go to our machine and we're going to sew down both sides. And then when you're all done, place both bag pieces on top of each other just to make sure that everything is the same size, that the handles are coming up the same length. Make any adjustments as needed, and let's go to our machine. We're going to sew right on top of the stitch line that is already there. A little forward and back stitch, and sew right down. Just remove your pin partially so that it still holds the other side. Okay, when we get to the top here, I'm gonna pause right there, lift my presser foot, pivot and turn. I can remove that pin now. and go across the side. And I am going to do a forward and back stitch here. I think this helps reinforce. Pivot, turn, and come back down the other side. When I get right here, I'm going to do the same thing. It's kind of a stressor point. So I'm going to do a forward and back stitch. That just reinforces it a little bit more. Then I'm going to go and do the same thing on this side. And then do all the same steps with the other side of the bag. Now sew all the pieces together. Take the first side piece, place it with right sides together, matching it up perfectly, pin it in place, and then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. Sew each of these in place with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Press the seam to the side, give it a nice firm press, then sew a top stitch. This will help it lay nicely in the bag. We are so close, 2 more steps. Take the whole thing, fold it in half, and line up the sides. Hopefully everything works out perfectly with where we sewed the bottom. That looks beautiful. Pin that in place. And how we sewed the top. Oh, it's working out. Pin down both sides. Sew down both sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, you could turn your bag right side out and be done with it. That's cute for a little book bag, but we are gonna do one more step. We're gonna box out the bottom, which is gonna make it stand up and be that 3-dimensional look. And I have shown you how to do this in other videos. You can look at my drawstring bag video, my drawstring backpack, my other tote bag video, but you can see how I'm turning the sides perpendicular. I'm making these side seams come together on the inside of the bag, and this is making a 90-degree angle here. So the key is that you want to make sure it's pulled out all the way like that. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. Then I am going to measure down. Often I do 3 inches. This time I'm going to try 2.5 inches. It just is preference on how much you want it to be boxed out. So I'm going to start from the point here, not this point, but the top of where my seam came together. So I'm measuring down 2.5 inches, and then I'm going to turn perpendicular, and this should make twice that amount. So I should have a 5-inch line, which, yep, I sure do. So I'm going to draw that right there, and that is what I'm going to sew in place. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. 2.5 inches. 5 inches. And this is just an erasable pen. Now, I don't want to sew these together. I'm going to sew them separately, but go to our machine, sew that one in place, and sew the other one in place. And we are done, my friends. I am just going to leave this in the bottom like that. It's going to help give some structure to it. You can trim off any loose threads, and because this is duck cloth, it is going to fray a bit. To be honest, I find that doesn't really bother me, especially because we used a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think it's gonna work out just fine. If that really bothers you and you had a serger, you could serge those edges before you started sewing, or you could try using some pinking shears, but truly, I just leave mine as is. Look how nicely that's standing up. And you can see those little pieces are just gonna lay in there. Oh my goodness, that is so cute. Oh, I love it. Every time when you make something, it's just like this little piece of magic. So cute. Okay, there are so many options you could add to this bag. You could put cute patches on the pocket. You'd want to do that before you sew the pocket piece on. Be cute to put a little journal in there. You could try it with all sorts of different fabric combos. You could add little tassels to the bag, other charms, things like that. So lots of options. And one more cherry on top. I'm gonna show you how to add this little D-ring to your bag so that we could add a bag charm. Oh, it's so cute. Start by cutting a piece of fabric that is 3.5 by 2.5 inches. I'm just using scrap fabric left over from my handle pieces from another bag that I made, but you could use twill tape, you could use ribbon, lots of options. Then press that thing in half, folding the 3.5 length in half. Then press the two sides in just to enclose the raw edges. And then press one of the ends down about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. I've got my piece prepped, and then you want a D-ring, which you can buy at most craft stores or online. And this is going to look great on this other cute bag that I made. Stick the D-ring in like that, and let me show you how it's going to work before we sew it on the bag. I'm basically going to have these raw edges meet on the back, which is the part that's gonna lay on the bag. First, we're gonna go to the machine. I'm gonna place mine right there. I think that looks cute. And I'm going to sew it in place right here. Then that will be enclosed. It can fold down. And then I'm gonna sew another line to enclose that other one right there. And then we have a little spot for our charms. It's going to help if I can pull this part off my machine. If yours doesn't do that, no big deal. This makes it easy for me to get right under like that. Grab my piece. I'm gonna take this off for just a minute while I sew this in place. So like I said, first, I'm gonna sew right on this little crease. Then I'm gonna put my D-ring back on. Like that. And then, like I was saying, I'm just enclosing this little raw edge right there. I'm making it meet up so that it's not too bulky as I sew. All right, let's see how it looks. Oh, that is so cute. I used a thread color that matches the fabric so it doesn't stand out too much. And ooh, that's still showing a little bit. I think I'm gonna sew a second line right next to that one, just to really make sure it's in there. You can also move your needle over, and that helps if your presser foot is running into that D-ring. Forward and back stitch, sew right down. That looks fantastic. Then grab your little charm and stick it right on. I predict there are going to be many more of these in my future. With every fabric collection, I will be like, let's sew 10 more bags, because why not? And give them to every person I know. You should do that too. For more ideas, patterns, tutorials, and other videos, you can check out my website, madeeveryday.com. And to check out the Baby Lock Brilliant machine that I used here in this video. And for other sewing machines from the Genuine series, you can go to babylock.com, where their motto is all for the love of sewing. Have a great day, have lots of fun sewing, and I will see you next time. Bye.